something feels wrong before anyone even says a word. The camera opens on a quiet hotel room where Trish and Ick are sitting across from each other. At first glance, it should be a happy moment. In just a short time, Ick will be meeting Trish's family for the very first time. For most couples, that moment usually comes with excitement, nervous laughter, maybe even a little anxiety about making a good impression. But this moment feels different. Instead of excitement, the air between them feels tense, heavy, almost like a storm that hasn't started yet, but everyone can feel coming. And within minutes, that storm finally hits. Because what begins as a simple conversation quickly turns into something much bigger. A fight about trust, betrayal, and the one mistake that still haunts their entire relationship. And when Trish finally brings up the cheating that shattered their trust, Ick does something no one expected. Instead of taking responsibility, he blames her. That's when the entire conversation explodes. At first, Trish tries to keep things calm. She reminds him that her family simply wants to meet the man she cares about. In her mind, introducing him to her parents is a big step forward, proof that she's trying to build something real despite everything that happened between them. But Ick doesn't seem focused on the upcoming meeting at all. Instead, he starts asking the same question over and over again. Do you actually want me? At first, the question sounds like simple insecurity. Trish laughs lightly and reassures him. Of course she wants him. Otherwise, she wouldn't be bringing him to meet her family. But the reassurance doesn't stop the questions. Because a moment later, he asks again. And then again. Each time the wording changes slightly, but the doubt underneath it stays exactly the same. Do you really want this relationship? Do you actually see a future with me? What should have been a normal conversation slowly starts turning into something uncomfortable. Trish answers patiently at first, but after repeating herself several times, the frustration begins to show. From her perspective, the situation should already be obvious. She chose to stay. She chose to move forward. And most importantly, she chose to give the relationship another chance after the betrayal that nearly destroyed it. Because that betrayal still hangs over everything between them. The cheating. Even when no one says the word out loud, the memory of it never really disappears. And eventually, the conversation reaches the moment where that unspoken history finally comes crashing back into the room. The shift happens almost by accident. While discussing places they might visit with her family, Trish casually mentions a location she likes, a scenic place she once visited in the past. It seems like a harmless comment. Until she adds one small detail. She mentions that she once went there with an ex. The reaction from Ick is immediate. His expression tightens. His tone sharpens. And suddenly the conversation that was already tense becomes something much worse. Instead of brushing off the comment, he zeroes in on it. Why would she want to go somewhere connected to another man? Trish tries to explain that she simply likes the location itself. People visit places with different people all the time. It doesn't mean anything emotionally, but by this point, the conversation is no longer about a location. It's about jealousy, control, and the deeper insecurities that have been sitting beneath the surface since the cheating happened. And that's when Trish finally says the thing that changes everything. She reminds him of the truth he keeps trying to avoid. The reason trust became fragile in their relationship isn't because she mentioned an ex. The reason trust became fragile is because he cheated. The room goes silent. For a moment, it almost seems like Ick might reflect on what she just said. But instead of acknowledging it, he flips the argument completely. Suddenly, the problem isn't the cheating. According to him, the real problem is that Trish keeps bringing it up. And just like that, the entire conversation turns upside down. The person who betrayed the relationship is now acting like the victim of the consequences. And the argument that follows reveals something even more troubling than the cheating itself. Because the deeper the conversation goes, the more it begins to look like Trish isn't just dealing with betrayal. She might be dealing with something far more dangerous. A pattern of blame, deflection, and emotional manipulation that keeps turning every argument back on her. And by the end of the conversation, one uncomfortable question becomes impossible to ignore. Is this relationship actually healing? Or is it trapped in a cycle that will never truly change? Link. Something about the atmosphere already feels tense before anything even happens. The scene opens quietly, yet the energy between Trish and Ick feels far from calm. They are sitting in their hotel room talking about something that should honestly be exciting. Soon, Ick will be meeting Trish's family for the first time. For most couples, this moment carries a mix of nerves and excitement, the kind of nervous energy that comes from wanting to make a good impression. But here the mood feels heavier than that, instead of excitement building. Between them, there is a strange pressure sitting in the room, almost like both of them are walking on emotional glass. Trish seems hopeful that the meeting will go well. She tries to keep the tone light and reassuring, reminding him that her family simply wants to get to know the person she cares about. In her mind, the situation is fairly straightforward. If they are serious about the relationship, then this is simply the next step. Yet Ick does not appear to share the same confidence. His posture looks tense, his voice carries hesitation, and every answer he gives sounds like it is hiding another question underneath it. Rather than focusing on the upcoming family meeting, Ick begins circling around a completely different concern. Instead of asking practical things about the visit or wondering what her parents might be like, he begins questioning something much more personal. He starts asking Trish whether she truly wants him. The question does not come once in a simple moment of insecurity. It comes again and again, each time with slightly different wording but the same underlying doubt. At first, Trish tries to brush it off. She laughs lightly and reminds him that she would not be introducing him to her family if she did not care about him. Her tone suggests that she thinks the reassurance should be enough. But the strange thing about insecurity is that reassurance rarely satisfies it for long. Ick listens, nods slightly, then asks the same kind of question again in a different way. Does she really see a future with him? Does she actually want this relationship? Is she fully committed to him? Each question begins to chip away at the calm she was trying to maintain. There is a subtle shift in her expression, the kind of expression someone makes when they realize a conversation is not moving forward, but instead going in circles. Trish reminds him once again that she is standing here with him, planning for him to meet her family, which should already answer the question. She tries to keep her voice patient because she senses that if she becomes irritated, the conversation will only spiral faster. Yet the spiral seems almost unavoidable. The deeper problem sitting underneath Ick's repeated questions is not simply insecurity. It is the history between them. There is a shadow over their relationship that never fully disappears, the memory of the moment when trust was broken. The cheating incident still lingers in the background of every conversation they have, even when neither of them says the word out loud. Because of that history, every doubt carries extra weight. When Ick asks if she truly wants him, it does not sound like an innocent question. It sounds like someone searching for reassurance while simultaneously refusing to accept responsibility for the damage that created the insecurity in the first place. Trish seems to feel that contradiction building beneath the conversation, and the more the questions continue, the more her patience begins to wear thin. She eventually stops laughing the questions away and answers more directly. She explains that she has already chosen to move forward despite everything that happened in the past. For her, continuing the relationship was already a difficult decision. The fact that she is still standing beside him should make that clear. Yet even as she explains this, Ick's expression remains skeptical, almost as if he cannot believe the reassurance he asked for. This is where the emotional tone of the scene begins to change. What started as mild insecurity slowly transforms into something more unsettling. Instead of accepting her answer and calming down, Ick starts analyzing her words as though he is searching for hidden meanings inside them. He asks whether she is sure she is not still holding on to feelings from the past. He wonders if she might secretly regret staying with him. Trish looks genuinely confused at this point. From her perspective, the conversation has already been answered several times. The constant repetition of doubt begins to feel less like vulnerability and more like a test she never agreed to take. She tells him clearly that she is tired of repeating the same reassurance. If he cannot believe her when she says she wants to move forward, then she does not know what else she is supposed to say. For a moment, the room falls quiet. It is the kind of silence that comes after tension has built. But before it finally breaks, both of them seem aware that the conversation has reached a fragile point. One wrong comment could easily turn the entire discussion into an argument. Unfortunately, that fragile balance does not last long. While discussing places they might visit with her family during the upcoming meeting, Trish casually mentions a location she enjoys. It sounds like an innocent suggestion, the kind of thing people say without thinking twice about it. She says that she likes that place because it has beautiful views and a relaxed atmosphere. But then she adds one small detail that immediately changes everything. She mentions that she had once visited that place with her ex. The moment the words leave her mouth, the emotional temperature in the room shifts. Ick's expression tightens almost instantly. What had been quiet tension now begins turning into visible irritation. Instead of brushing the comment aside as a simple piece of past history, he focuses on it with sudden intensity. He repeats the phrase she just said, almost as if he cannot believe he heard it correctly. She visited that place with her ex. Trish quickly realizes that her casual comment has landed badly. She tries to clarify that mentioning the ex was not meant to carry any emotional meaning. She simply liked the location itself. For her, it was a passing detail with no deeper significance. But Ick does not appear interested in that explanation. His tone changes, becoming sharper and more confrontational. He asks why she would even want to go somewhere connected to a previous relationship. The question sounds less like curiosity and more like an accusation. The way he phrases it suggests that the location itself now feels tainted simply because it was once part of her past. Trish begins defending herself calmly at first. She explains that liking a place does not mean she is thinking about the person she went there with before. People have memories attached to many locations, and that does not mean those memories define the present. She tries to keep the conversation grounded in simple logic, but logic is rarely effective when jealousy begins driving the conversation. Ick's irritation starts turning into something closer to anger. He dismisses the place entirely, calling it cheap and worthless, as though insulting the location somehow proves his point. The argument becomes less about the actual destination and more about what he believes the comment represents. According to him, the real issue is respect. If she truly respected their relationship, then she would avoid bringing up anything connected to previous partners. From his perspective, the casual mention of her ex shows that she is still thinking about the past more than she should. B. Trish looks increasingly frustrated as the accusations continue. She reminds him that she was simply making conversation about possible places to visit. There was no emotional meaning behind the comment. Yet the more she explains the situation, the more defensive Ick becomes. The conversation that began with quiet insecurity is now moving steadily toward confrontation. Trish finally reaches a point where she cannot ignore the contradiction any longer. She reminds him of something that has been hanging over their relationship since the beginning. The reason trust became fragile between them was not because she mentioned an ex in conversation. The reason trust became fragile was because he cheated. The reminder lands in the room like a sudden weight. For a moment, Ick goes silent. Not the silence of someone reconsidering their behavior, but the silence of someone preparing to push back even harder. And the moment he begins responding, the conversation takes an even darker turn. The silence does not last long. It never really does when two people are carrying unresolved resentment into the same conversation. The moment Trish brings up the cheating, the air in. The room seems to tighten even further. For a second, it almost looks like Ick might pause and reflect on what she said. Instead, his reaction moves in the opposite direction. Rather than acknowledging the past, he immediately begins shifting the focus away from his own actions. His voice becomes defensive, almost irritated that the subject has been brought up again. According to him, bringing up the cheating now is unfair. He claims that every time they try to move forward, Trish drags the relationship backwards by bringing the past into the present. The logic of that statement hangs awkwardly in the room. Trish stares at him in disbelief, trying to process how the conversation suddenly turned into her being blamed for remembering something that he actually did. From her perspective, the argument makes no sense. The trust in their relationship was broken because of his decision. Yet, somehow, she is now being accused of damaging the relationship simply by acknowledging it happened. She tries to keep her voice steady while responding. Her tone carries a mix of frustration and exhaustion, the kind that builds when someone feels like they have been explaining the same truth over and over again without being heard. She reminds him calmly that she is not inventing the past. The cheating happened. Ignoring it will not magically erase the damage it caused. But Ick does not seem interested in that distinction. His reaction becomes even more defensive. Instead of accepting responsibility, he continues redirecting the conversation back toward her behavior. He argues that relationships cannot survive if one person keeps reminding the other of their mistakes. In his mind, if they truly want to move forward, then she should stop bringing up the betrayal entirely. That argument immediately strikes Trish as deeply unfair. Moving forward does not mean pretending nothing happened. Trust takes time to rebuild, and rebuilding it requires honesty about the reason it was broken in the first place. She tries explaining that the pain did not disappear overnight just because they decided to stay together. As she speaks, the frustration in her voice becomes harder to hide. The conversation has reached a point where every sentence seems to reveal a deeper imbalance between them. Instead of acknowledging the harm he caused, Ick continues acting as though the real problem is her reaction to it. His body language grows more animated as he speaks. He gestures sharply while defending himself as though he believes the intensity of his response will somehow prove his argument stronger. He repeats the same idea again and again. Every time they make progress, she is the one pushing them backwards. Hearing that accusation seems to hit a nerve inside Trish. The disbelief on her face slowly turns into anger. She asks him directly how he can claim that she is the one damaging the relationship when he was the person who cheated in the first place. The words come out, more sharply now, no longer wrapped in the patience she tried maintaining earlier. For a brief moment, the room falls silent again, but this silence feels different. The earlier quiet carried uncertainty. This one carries confrontation. Ick reacts to the challenge almost instantly. Instead of stepping back or reconsidering his position, he doubles down. He claims that constantly mentioning the cheating shows she has not truly forgiven him. According to him, forgiveness means leaving the past behind completely. If she cannot do that, then he believes she is the one keeping the relationship stuck in conflict. The argument leaves Trish visibly stunned. She did not expect the conversation to twist in this direction so aggressively. It feels like the entire emotional burden of the situation is being placed on her shoulders, while the original betrayal is being treated as something that should simply disappear with time. She reminds him once again that she is not the one who chose to break the trust between them. Her voice carries a mixture of disbelief and hurt as she says it. She points out that forgiving someone does not erase the memory of what happened. Forgiveness is a process, not a switch that turns pain off instantly. Yet every attempt she makes to explain that idea seems to bounce off him without effect. Ick continues framing the situation as though he is the one being treated unfairly. He complains that he feels constantly judged and that he cannot move forward if she refuses to stop, bringing up the past. Listening to him speak, the contradiction becomes almost impossible to ignore. The person who caused the damage is now portraying himself as the victim of the consequences. The conversation begins escalating faster now, what started as tension slowly building. Beneath the surface has transformed into a full argument. Their voices rise slightly. The careful patience from earlier replaced by blunt frustration. Trish eventually asks a simple but direct question. If he truly believes she is the problem, then why did he betray her trust in the first place? The question hangs in the air, demanding an honest answer. But honesty does not come. Instead, Ick sidesteps the question entirely. Rather than explaining his actions, he returns to criticizing her behavior. He says that her attitude proves she does not respect him the way a partner should. According to him, respect means not constantly reminding someone of their mistakes. The statement feels like the final spark in a conversation that has been building pressure for several minutes. Trish shakes her head in disbelief, clearly struggling to understand how the discussion has become so twisted. From her perspective, the situation is painfully clear. He betrayed her trust, yet somehow she is being blamed for acknowledging it. Her frustration finally breaks through completely. She tells him that refusing to accept responsibility is exactly why the relationship keeps falling into the same arguments. Every time they discuss the issue, he avoids accountability and instead tries to turn the blame back on her. Ick responds with visible irritation. He insists that he already apologized for the cheating and that continuing to discuss it is unnecessary. In his mind, the apology should have closed the subject permanently. The fact that she still brings it up feels, to him, like punishment rather than conversation. That perspective only deepens the divide between them. To Trish, the apology was only the beginning of rebuilding trust. To Ick, it was the end of the conversation entirely. The mismatch between those expectations becomes painfully obvious as the argument continues. Each of them is operating under a completely different understanding of what healing from betrayal actually requires. Trish points out that trust is not restored through a single apology. It requires consistent honesty, patience, and accountability. Without those things, the damage simply continues to linger beneath the surface. But instead of engaging with that point, Ick reacts with growing frustration. He claims that she is exaggerating the situation and refusing to let the relationship move forward. The way he speaks makes it sound as though he believes the real problem is her inability to forget. The emotional weight of the conversation begins pressing down on both of them now. The earlier tension has transformed into something heavier, something that feels less like a disagreement and more like a fundamental clash in how each of them sees the relationship. Trish leans back slightly, shaking her head again as she listens to him continue defending himself. The exhaustion in her expression is impossible to miss. It is the look of someone realizing that the conversation is not leading toward resolution, but instead circling endlessly around the same conflict. Still, the argument refuses to settle down, because the next thing Ick says pushes the situation even further into dangerous territory. For a moment, it almost looks like the argument might slow down. Both of them sit there in silence, breathing a little heavier than before, the emotional exhaustion finally starting to show. But the pause does not bring clarity. Instead, it creates space for something even more troubling to appear. Ick looks at Trish with a frustrated expression and begins speaking again, but this time his tone carries something different. It is no longer just defensive. There is a strange edge to his words, the kind that slowly shifts a conversation away from accountability and toward control. He tells her that the real issue in their relationship is not what happened before. According to him, the real issue is how she treats him now. He claims that her attitude has changed over time, that she used to be more supportive and understanding, and that lately she has become critical and distant. The comment catches Trish off guard. A moment ago, they were arguing about cheating and responsibility. Now the conversation is being redirected toward her personality. She asks him what exactly he means, clearly confused about how the discussion suddenly moved in that direction. Ick responds by saying that relationships require balance. In his view, a partner should offer encouragement and trust, not constant criticism. He suggests that her reactions to the past have made him feel like he is constantly under attack, like nothing he does is ever enough to prove he has changed. Listening to this explanation, Trish's expression slowly shifts from confusion to disbelief. She cannot understand how asking for accountability has somehow been reinterpreted as attacking him. Her voice tightens slightly as she responds, pointing out that expecting honesty and responsibility is not the same thing as being critical. But the conversation continues drifting further away from the original issue. Ick insists that her tone and behavior have been pushing him away emotionally. He describes feeling judged, as if she views him only through the lens of his past mistake rather than seeing the person he claims he is trying to become. At first glance, the argument almost sounds reasonable, which is exactly what makes the situation so unsettling. Beneath the surface of his words, there is a subtle shift happening.